James, thanks for coming on board today. I know we had a great chat outside, and I said to you, we've got to stop talking because we're going to do the whole potty out here. There's so much to unpack with you. Let's talk about why you specialize in leadership training and how it all came about first.
Yeah. Thanks for having me as well for this, Nick. It's like I said,
Mate,
first
this is going to be a great
podcast.
chat. I'm pumped for this one.
45 minutes.
It's going to be longer, I can feel it.
So leadership for me, I've always been interested in leadership. From even when I was a little kid, I was in like captain of a sports team and all that, and prefect of school, which doesn't really mean much. Yeah,
hated
probably.
him. Oh, this guy thinks he's great at everything.
Yeah. No, I wasn't. Absolutely. I definitely wasn't. And then I ended up in the army. Again, I went to Duntroon, the leadership school and all this. So I've been in leadership positions for a real long time. So it's something that I've always been interested in. Why it became something I cared even more about is because I've seen how good, or the impact a really, really good leader can have on a team. And I've seen the impact that a really bad leader can have on a team. For me, I like excellence. I like people, like teams performing at their best. And for me, leadership is one of the critical pieces that's overlooked a lot of the time. A team can't outperform a bad leader.
So what makes a great leader and what makes a terrible leader?
Oh, that's a big question. Can I ask you a question? So I've asked this question nearly every single leadership group I've ever worked with. Yeah. I said, if you think about the best leader you've ever seen or the best leader you've ever worked with, so think about that person. And what makes them stand out from the rest? What makes them a great leader as opposed to a good leader?
The best leader I worked with when I was younger, he got in the trenches with me and helped me when I needed it.
Yep.
So there were things I just struggled with, and he goes, Nick, I've got your back. I'm going to help you. I'm going to stay with you until it's done. And for that, I was like, I'm going to bleed for you because you've got my back.
Brilliant. So I've asked that question hundreds and hundreds of times now to hundreds of different leaders, and I've usually asked for 3 characteristics, and I write them up on a whiteboard, and there's a line down the middle. Everything that they say that is related to how they make them feel, that makes them that they remembered everyone's names, they were vulnerable, they owned their mistakes, they cared about me, they put my growth first, they really pushed me, they challenged me. I put on the left-hand side. Everything that's technically based, they had great communication, they were good at vision, they were great at decision-making. I put on the right-hand side. Throughout the hundreds of times I've done this now, the left-hand side of that board is absolutely chockers. The right-hand side's maybe got 1 per group of 10. So for me, what makes a great leader, as opposed to a good leader, is actually taking interest in the people, being vulnerable, and not vulnerable as a lot of people sort of make it out to be on LinkedIn and things like that, like true vulnerability of owning your mistakes, admitting when you don't know and putting people forward. That's what separates the great from the good. It's got nothing to do with your ability to come up with a great vision. That you can be a good leader and have that. Yeah. But unless you care about people and can really influence people, that's what separates good from great.
Yeah. I always think vision is completely overrated most of the time. So I've got this 5-year vision. I'm like, let's think of the now. Let's talk about the now.
Yeah.
And from personal experience, I know my most loyal team members, I know about their families. They know that I'm generally the dumbest guy in the room and they've got skill sets I haven't got, and they know that I'll bleed for them and they'll bleed for me.
Yep.
I don't think I'm a great leader. I think I'm decent.
Yep. There's
areas I can definitely improve in, especially being probably more empathetic at times.
Yeah.
Because I'm very decisive. Go, 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 go. Let's get this done. And I probably need to sit back and go, okay, not how does this make you feel, but kind of hear them a bit more and talk to them a bit more.
Yeah. I think empathy is a really interesting one, and it does come up a lot of the time on that left-hand side. Yeah. Like this is what they made this leader. They were genuinely empathetic. Yeah. And you ask people what that means, or what behaviours did they show. So a lot of the time, there's a lot of leadership advice out there saying you need to be more empathetic. Like, great, how?
Yeah.
How do I be more empathetic?
Yeah, how?
So that's when you find people that say, hey, what was this empathetic leader that you worked with? What did they do? And it's usually stuff like, hey, they listened. They really listened to me when I came to a challenge, they'd ask questions rather than just coming up with a solution straight away.
Yeah.
They took an interest in me. Empathy comes naturally if you care for your people.
Agreed.
If
Agreed.
you, I don't have people I despise. It's very hard to have
You're dead
empathy
to
for
me.
them. Yeah.
If I don't like you, you're actually
Yeah.
dead to me.
Yeah. So if we care about our people, and the thing, if someone's in your team, it's usually a lot of teams, it's good teams, have got someone in that team that challenges you.
Yeah.
Someone in that team that is the one, you'll give a plan, you'll give for what I used to do, I'll give orders. And there's this one person that's always going to come up and be like, I don't like this plan. I think there's a better way of doing it. That's the person who's one of the most valuable people in your team. But that's the person that's really hard to be empathetic with sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it's challenging.
Did you learn these skills in the SAS?
So the way that it works with the Army, it's a bit, when you join the SAS, you lose your rank. So by the time I applied for the Special Air Service Regiment.
So you're in the Army first?
Yep. So I was in the Army first, and I spent 7 years in the Infantry Corps.
Oh, wow.
So by the time...
Were you deployed at the time?
Yep. I deployed to East Timor once in a peacekeeping role, and that was as a second in command. So I was sort of in charge of 4 people and second in command of 8. And then I deployed to Afghanistan in about 10 months, actually, with 1 RAR, with the 1st Battalion.
How was that?
It was good. It was a deployment. First time I was actually properly in combat. First time we had casualties. So it was a very different experience to East Timor. But it was also one of the my deployments I look back on with the most fondness.
Why is that, if you don't mind? Because you obviously saw death, destruction. Why do you think this is a kind of a, not a fond moment, but a moment that you kind of cherish?
Yeah. Well, so one thing that the movies don't get right is that when you're deployed, you're not in combat every single day, 24/7.
Yeah.
The combat's, especially back then with the infantry, was quite rare. The reason that sticks out for me is one of my favourite deployments is there was a 10-month deployment. We had no Wi-Fi. There was no social media. I think Facebook was starting to become a thing. We had no access to internet or anything like that. So when we weren't patrolling, doing that stuff, we were sitting around talking. I've got the mates that I've got from that deployment are second to none because we spent 10 months with nothing to do but talk to each other. The guys I still talk to there's guys from that team that I still talk to every second or third day. Yeah. And we were also doing what we joined up to do. So yes, there is horrible things. We had someone killed in action. We had several people seriously wounded. And we all had close calls. But to put it in a sporting analogy, I suppose, you don't play AFL to train all the time. Yeah. For us, that's what we joined up to do. And it wasn't for everyone. Some people got part of the way through the deployment and said, look, this isn't for me. And
Can you tap out at any time? Can you go, I'm halfway through, I've had enough, I want to go home?
You can. It's very rare. And it's generally it did happen for a couple. And that was after we had someone killed. They stuck their hand up and said, I just can't do it. So you've got a choice at that point. Do you just tell this person, yes, you can, keep them on and force them to put themselves potentially through real trauma when they can't process it, or just at that point support them and let them go. And so it happens very rarely, but yes, you can just say, look, I can't keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you're in Afghanistan, coming to Australia. What happens next?
So I got exposed to the SAS on that deployment. I'd always wanted to be in the SAS. On that deployment, had a couple of times where
just to clarify, what is the SAS?
So the Special Air Service Regiment. So Australia's probably most elite Special Forces unit. They're the smallest, and they're the kind of the go-to unit for the government.
The equivalent to, say, the US regiment would be?
What everyone sort of refers to as Delta Force or SEAL Team 6 is probably the equivalent in America.
The reason I asked this question, I didn't know that 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of different Special Forces units in the world, and they've got there's a lot, actually.
So it's the best of the best, really.
For Australia, yep. It's British SAS and British Special Boat Service is kind of similar as well.
Okay.
So I'd always wanted to be in the SAS, and that deployment really solidified it for me because in the regular army, I didn't have a heap of autonomy. I didn't get to really contribute as an individual that much. Yeah. Whereas the SAS, it's really small teams. You are subject matter expert into whatever area you're going into, so you've got a lot more autonomy.
And what was your subject matter?
Once I got qualified, for me, I'd probably end up with the Middle East. So I was specialised in skydiving, so free fall. And then I ended up speaking Arabic. I learned Arabic.
Really?
Yep.
Are you fluent?
I was fluent in either the Syrian or Iraqi dialect.
That's a crazy skill.
Yep. It was funny though, because one of my deployment when I was in the regiment, did a couple more deployments to Afghanistan with the SAS, and then I deployed to Southeast Asia, and really decided that I hated it. The jungle, humid, big mosquitoes everywhere, just wasn't my thing. I loved the Middle East, I loved the history, and all that there. So I just said, well, how do I make sure that I'm never deployed to Southeast Asia again, and make sure I keep going back to the Middle East? So I did a 3-month-long Army Arabic course, which teaches you a dialect that literally no one speaks. It's completely useless.
That's through the Army.
Yep.
Do they use an app, or is it purely, do you have a teacher that will teach you the language?
There's a language school. So you go to the language school.
And you learn in 3 months?
No, God, no. You can learn, there's some languages you can get pretty good at in 3 months, like the Tokpisin, like trade languages.
Yeah.
Arabic, the 12-month language course, you're still not that good at it. So I did a 3-month one with them just to show interest, I suppose. Then I paid for myself and used my own leave to go to Jordan for 2 months and studied at the Jordan Language Academy, and then came back and said, hey, I've demonstrated that I'm willing to put my own money and time to this and I'm committed. Yeah. Will you now do it? And then they sent me there for most of a year to study in Jordan. That's a fair way forward. But so I suppose my specialty was Arabic. I specialised in joint terminal air controlling, which is, as well as all your other jobs, calling in airstrikes and talking to helicopters and the fighter jets. Yeah. So I had a fairly broad range of experience when I was there.
And then so obviously you join the SAS, and then what happens next?
Yep. You have to do the selection course. So the SAS selection course is horrific, 21-day selection course, and you do 18 months of training.
Is that similar to the one the Navy SEALs do? Is it called Hell Week? Where they do 7 days, no sleep. Is it similar to that?
Yeah, but theirs only goes for 7 days.
Yeah, true. True. As yours, was it 21 days?
Yep.
Can you sleep? What's the whole process like?
Yeah, it's a really, really cool course. It's something I've done this.
Course.
Yeah, to watch, not to participate in.
Oh, right.
So I helped out in every course, nearly every course once I was qualified. But the first about 10 days so you have to get selected first. So you have to pass a lot of fitness standards and all this just to make it to the door.
Yeah.
Every year, about 150 people try out. First 10 days is a lot of physical training. Pretty much you're getting a bit of sleep. So you're getting probably about 6 hours sleep a night.
Okay, so it's reasonable.
Yep, first 10 days.
Yeah.
You're getting food, and it slowly just starts getting less and less.
Tapering off.
Yep. But you do a short, like a 3-day, this first 10 days, you do a 3-day navigation exercise just to sort of test your navigation skills before you really test you. So we don't send people out somewhere and never see them again.
Yeah.
A lot of PT, very interrupted sleep. And
what do you mean PT?
Physical training, sorry.
Yep.
So workouts, it'll go for 2 or 3 hours and just be absolutely
just really intense training.
Doesn't matter how fit you are when you turn up, we'll break you. We'll get you to the point. If you can do 500 push-ups when you turn up, you'll have to do 6.
Were you one of those guys where you're yelling at people? Yeah. You're a scum. You're a piece of shit. Were you one of those guys?
So no, it's actually on the selection course. There is no feedback to individuals, positive or negative. So if you do an assessment and we teach you skills and we test you on them, you do an assessment and you nail it. You know that you've absolutely kicked this out of the park. The feedback you're going to get is
no
next. If you know you've stuffed it.
Where's the reassurance? I promised I did well.
Yep. But if you stuff it, you 100% know that you've stuffed it. You couldn't have done anything worse. The feedback you get is next. The reason that is the biggest negative thing that happens to people on selection is they don't get any feedback. And then we leave them alone so we give them 10 days of really, really hard stuff, no feedback. Then we let them go on their own for 3 days where they won't see anyone for 3 days. And that's when we lose. I think that one's 48 hours. So they won't see anyone over that period of time.
Where do they go for 48 hours?
Navigating around. We've got a series of checkpoints they have to get.
Gotcha.
So the other thing with the selection course, we don't kick anyone off. A handful of people get kicked off, usually for integrity. They've lied about something and we've caught them. Or if it's not safe.
But do they give up?
So the only way, most people, 90% of people pull off that course. So you get a slip of paper on day one.
Yep.
It's got, you fill in your name, voluntary withdrawal from the SAS selection course, something along those lines. So for someone to pull off that course, they have to sign that slip of paper and hand it to instructor. And that's how nearly everyone pulls off. So it's got nothing to do with, we don't yell at you, we don't tell you you're incompetent. We'll leave you alone for 2 days and you'll go, stuff that, I stuffed this,
psychological warfare just there.
Yeah. It's amazing how it is, because a lot of the time people who are, we're trying to look for people who are individually brilliant but work incredibly well as a team.
Yeah.
So that's the real challenge, is we find people that have to work well as a team. There's a lot of people out there that are individually amazing soldiers, but they're not suitable for the SAS because of the culture that they'll bring and so on. So we need to find that.
Yeah.
Sometimes people turn up to selection, they've been given, if you're 6'4" in the infantry and you're 100-something kilograms, you can do 200 push-ups, run this in this time, you are constantly getting reassurance.
Yeah.
Everyone's always going, you're a weapon, you're awesome, you're great at this. You turn up at selection, you do 100 burpees, finish before everyone else, and you get, all of a sudden people start going, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Throughout that whole course, everyone pulls themselves off. And it's something that, it's not just, the selection course is brilliant to see it, but it happens business world, personal world as well. Most people, or a lot of people, give up at things not because they're failing, not because they're not good enough, because they think they're failing, because they think they're not good enough.
Yeah. It's like people that start businesses, the first year or 2 or 3 is quite hard, and they go, it's just too hard, and they give up.
Yeah.
If they just push through that little bit of pain, there's so much glory on the other side.
Yeah.
Very similar, but obviously not as hard as doing a 21-day course with no sleep.
Yeah.
So after the first 10 days, what happens then?
Then we put you out on your own for 5 days. There's a couple of huge training areas in Perth.
They give you food.
You get about food for 3 days. So you get about 3 days food.
Yeah.
But then you're just given these. So we're not
a tent.
You carry. You've got your own
like
sort of
a
one you
swag.
carry. Sleeping bag with a waterproof liner over it
Okay.
and a tarp. That's what sort of everyone in the army carries.
Yep.
So we give you, for us, we did the Stirling Mountains in Perth, and you've got 5 days and you get given a series of checkpoints and you have to use a map and compass to find them. For us, the navigation on our one was quite easy because it was pretty much the top of every single mountain in the Stirling Ranges. And over that time, you sort of cover maybe a couple hundred. I think it's well over 100 kilometres, carrying 50 plus kilograms on your back and walking up these massive hills. So we lose another third of the candidates from that course.
Yeah.
A lot of time because they're spending so much time alone,
yeah.
They just get in their own heads,
yeah.
or they get lost, and that pulls them off. And then after that's what we call, for the SAS, that's when selection starts after that. All of this we consider like pre-work.
This is day 15. You've had not the easy part, but it's a little bit easier than the last 6 days, I presume.
For some people it is. I found it much easier because I didn't have anyone, wasn't watching me all the time. There was no one assessing me all the time. So for me, I actually quite liked just being able to walk
Having your own time.
Yeah, it was good. I liked that bit. And then you get you come back to camp for a day and you start Lucky Dip. And for us, this is when selection starts. It's 5 days, pretty much no sleep, no food, except for one halfway through it you'll get a meal, which is awful.
So no food and barely any sleep for 5 days, and I presume you're training is intensely.
It's constant. You're in a team now. You've got about 10 people per team.
Yeah. And
you've got tasks you do, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, one at night. And they're all really, really physical. They involve a lot of lateral thinking as well, so problem solving and teamwork.
Yeah.
And this is when, for us, you start seeing how people really work in a team.
Mm.
If someone's been really good in this point, but all of a sudden they're under pressure, they just start yelling at their teammates all the time.
Yeah.
They can't regulate their emotions. They take the easy jobs all the time.
Yeah.
That's when we really start assessing people. So I started selection. I had 106 kilos. So I put a few.
So how tall are you? 6'2"?
6'4".
6'4", you're a big guy.
Yeah. So I started as 106. I usually sit about 102.
Yeah.
I had more muscle, but I also put on a couple of extra kilos of fat.
Yeah.
Finished at 90 kilograms in 21 days.
Oh shit, what's that? 14 kilos.
16 kilo loss.
104. Was it 106?
106 to
106,
90.
sorry.
Yeah. So 16 kilo loss. A couple of that would have come on pretty quick, but that 5 days is, it's an absolute grind. It's a horrible experience. Really interesting.
Out of the 150 that apply, at the end, how many are generally remaining?
So we had, on the year I did it, we had, I think about 30 finished, and of that, just under 20 got selected. So some people will finish the course and not be selected.
Why is that? Why aren't they selected?
Because we've seen that sort of behaviour. We've seen them.
They're erratic, they're emotional.
Yeah.
They can't work in a team.
Yep.
Relates to life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's there's a lot of there's quite a few interesting things research about showing how individual high performers can be really detrimental to a team. And I questioned that a lot when I first saw it because I was like, well, we're going against that, but what we're actually selecting people for isn't just that individual brilliance. It's about how well they can work in a team. So, but yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. You would have worked with people that were brilliant individually, but just because they're interpersonal skills, you wouldn't hire them.
I wouldn't hire them. No, just they bring the wrong dynamic to the team. Yeah. So after the training course, what happens next?
So I was lucky. Within probably 2 weeks of getting qualified, I was deployed again on a 7-month tour of Afghanistan.
Jeez, how was that?
This was this one. I've got to be a little bit careful with what I talk about with this one, but it was hands down one of the craziest deployments I've done. Not because of the amount of combat we were in, but because of how high risk what we were doing was. We were operating in Kandahar city in Afghanistan, which is probably one of the most dangerous cities at the time, and we were in a low profile sort of thing. So it was just 6 of us, usually 2 people in a car. We were driving around in local cars into the city, trying to locate people and work within the city. And I can't explain it too much.
Locate terrorists.
Yeah. Yep. And the enemy wasn't just the Taliban. Like the Afghan army, if they could get away with killing a couple of Westerners, they absolutely would have. So going through checkpoints and all that sort of stuff was really high risk for us.
Were there any hairy moments?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got pulled into checkpoints and taken out of the car with guns pointed at you by like Afghan soldiers. So you're not in a position where you can really engage them if they decided to. So
and in that situation, what do you do? They've obviously pulled you out of the car. Do you just kind of go with it or?
Very cool, calm, collected.
Yeah.
Very, very calm. You keep your hands just low and I could speak a little bit of Pashto, which is the dialect there.
Yeah.
I could speak that and just try and you just go with them, geez, you bribe, pay cash.
Is that it? Just got to bribe your way out of it?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah,
how many soldiers are there at the time?
Oh, some of those ones, they're big checkpoints. There's probably 30 or 40 people.
Okay, so you can't shoot your way out of there like a movie.
No. Once you're in there,
you're done.
Yeah, you've got to talk your way out. You can't rely on weapons to get you out of there.
And what size bribes are we talking about? Is it like $1,000 Australian?
No, usually we just carried US dollar 50s and you'd hand out a few of them. The money, US money there's worth a hell of a lot.
Yeah. So were you there for how many months? 7 months?
That was a 7-month trip, that one.
Okay.
That was a really good one. It was really interesting also with leadership, I suppose, with that one, but just going from now of being exposed to regular army leaders to now being exposed to SAS leaders, which was great.
What are the main difference between an army leader to an SAS leader?
Probably more with what I started noticing a lot more with the training even was reaction to combat. In the regular army, there's about the leaders need to be like getting loud, getting aggressive, get people pumped up to move and take the next pit or to move and try and close with the enemy.
Yep.
With the regiment, it's like, and that happened in Afghanistan, like with people being in combat and there'd be people shooting at random directions and people yelling and there'd be so much confusion. SAS, and probably more for the second tour I did with the SAS, we get into combat and it got calmer. It got slower. Leaders and everyone operated very, very cool, calm, collected. Information was passed along, decisions were made, and we just flowed. It was a very different vibe to it.
Do you think that's a better style of leadership?
Absolutely.
Because if the leader's level-headed, hopefully the team will stay level-headed.
Absolutely. Emotions are contagious,
yes.
Especially if you're a leader. And so if everyone's already at a 1 and the leader turns up at a 1, it bumps people to 2. We could see that with how one thing you encourage with leaders is you only speak on the radio, never yell into the radio. When you yell into the radio, people hear that and it's all of a sudden, next thing you know, everyone's yelling, everything's faster and it's much more reactionary.
Did you learn your leadership skills from your leader of that squadron?
I learned some. I learned some that were good, some that were bad.
Yeah.
And that's what I've probably done with my whole career. You asked a question about where I learned most of my leadership from early on. So I was in a leadership position with the regular army. I'd led a team on a tour.
Yep.
Then join the SAS and you're the lowest rank again.
Yes.
So you get
That's
demoted.
what I figured. That's why I asked you to learn from.
Yeah. So then, which was really, really good because it forces you now to, you've looked at what was working for you, but now you get a chance to sort of start again and to emulate, like some leaders got good aspects, leaders got bad aspects, work out which ones you do want to emulate and take that. But a lot of the leaders I've worked with, even with the SAS, had like areas that I definitely wouldn't have emulated.
What areas are they that you wouldn't emulate? You don't need to mention names, just curious. What traits did you find were just quite negative?
Yeah, look, it's a good question. Probably the biggest one, and the big thing with the SAS leaders is every single one of them was competent. They were really good at what they did. They knew tactics. A lot of them had done like a handful of tours already.
Yeah.
So they were really good. But where the difference is, and this is something that the Army teaches, is, and I've heard a lot in corporate world as well, you get taught it's not your job to be liked. So, and most leaders have come across this at some stage in their career.
Yeah.
I find that a really, really dangerous statement if it's not explained. So if we say, well, it's not your job to be liked, the reason people are saying that is because as a leader, you have to make tough decisions.
Yeah.
You have to make decisions that are about the benefit of the business, not the individual.
Yeah.
But when people get told it's not your job to be liked, they use that as an excuse to communicate poorly, not explain the reason why.
Yeah, agreed.
I have to fire someone. It's not my job to be liked. You're done. Get out.
Yeah.
As opposed to actually sitting down with someone and saying, look, empathizing with them, listening,
this
connecting.
is the reason why.
Yeah. With even a couple of the leaders I had within the regiment were technically excellent.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actual leadership, like how you actually get someone to give 110%, you can't demand that. People give that voluntarily.
Yeah.
And if you aren't taking time to actually connect with people and be liked, like being liked isn't in the job description, but it makes every aspect of leadership more effective. If you, like, what's the benefit apart from yourself of not being liked? Like if you're not liked, it's easier for me to fire someone because I don't need to think about how I do it.
Yeah.
I don't need to explain people why I'm making a decision because it's not my job to be liked.
Yeah.
But people won't like you and they'll give you 60%.
If they don't like you, they won't be loyal to you.
Exactly. Yep. You can't demand loyalty.
Agreed.
So so that I found there was a lot more of that old school leadership back then. And these were people who had been in the Army for 20 years at that point, and that's what they've been trained the whole time. Whereas you look at how SAS leaders are trained now, you could take an SAS leader, put them into any situation. Some of the junior guys and young leaders that are in the unit right now, you could put them into any situation, and I guarantee they'll thrive eventually. They'd have some technical knowledge they have to learn, but because they've learned how to influence, how to connect with people, and how to build trust and loyalty, that's what
so
the
I need
difference
to
is.
employ SAS people moving forward.
SAS non-commissioned. So don't worry about the officers.
SAS
Go for
non-commissioned. All right, I remember that.
I've got a plug for the non-commissioned.
So you deployed in Afghanistan, you obviously come back. When's your next deployment?
Probably 3 months later.
Where to?
Back to Afghanistan. And that was much more of a typical conventional, not conventional, but a typical SAS role where we were there to hunt, kill, capture the Taliban leaders. So that was a shorter tour. So that turned out to be about a 4 or 5 month tour. And that was us on helicopters most days. We knew roughly where the enemy were, trying to fly as close with them as we could and kill or capture the commanders in the area.
Was it successful?
Yep. That was a really successful tour for us. It was actually a winter rotation. So Afghanistan's traditionally got a fighting season, which is when all the crops are high. There's a lot of greenery. Everyone pictures Afghanistan as a desert.
Yeah. That's what we see in the movies.
Yeah. But it's no one fights in the desert, really. Like all the people are in the green zone along the rivers, which is very thick. You're lucky to get visibility out to 50 meters.
So the fighting time is during the winter?
Probably, spring, summer.
Spring, summer, because you can hide. Is that right?
No, yes, yep. But then during winter, all the crops are dead.
Yeah.
So then it's really, really exposed. And people don't fight then also because it's cold. There was a sort of tempo that happened over quite a few years, whereas, especially with the SAS, we'd have a couple of tours during the fighting season. And then it was just like a keeper's, like a tour of people just to keep a presence over the winter and not actually do any targeting. So for whatever reason, that was the case for our one. And we actually targeted. So we went out hunting and it caught leadership completely by surprise. It was also made it a lot easier because we didn't have to search through hundreds of meters of cornfield to try and find people.
Yeah.
If they tried to run from their buildings, they'd get into an aqueduct and they'd have to fight from there, which was our strength. So for us, it was a very successful tour. I think we got as many high-value targets on that trip as we did on pretty much any other one, even though it was a winter tour.
How do you feel when you've secured a high-value target? Like, how does it make you feel personally?
Secured or killed?
Both. I guess it's killed.
Either. Capturing is very valuable.
We'll say killed.
Yeah. Killed, it's satisfaction. If it's in a firefight, you've killed someone.
Yeah.
It's satisfying because you're alive.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they've been trying to kill you.
Yeah.
And you've won. There's not too much. I haven't ever really regretted or anything like that.
Yeah.
The people that I've been pretty clear with, the people who I've killed has been they were the enemy. I'm 100% sure of that, and they were trying to kill me at the time. So it hasn't really been something that I've overthought.
Yeah.
But for me, it's, at the time, it's satisfaction. You've done what you were there to do.
You mentioned earlier the difference between the Americans versus the Australians versus the Brits. Can you outline the difference between each country in terms of how they treat warfare?
Yeah. Yep. So I think...
And pros and cons of each.
Yeah. So I'm lucky because I've deployed with both now. So I've deployed with the Americans. So I deployed with the British as part of the British SAS and then was attached also to the Americans.
Yeah.
And again, this is just my perspective. My perspective, the British SAS are the best. They're the best in the world at special operations. They're the best at unconventional solutions, thinking well and truly outside the box and doing things that no one else would think about doing. They don't have as much equipment and they don't have as much money as what the Americans do.
So they're more resourceful.
Yep. They are, and they are also supported and backed 100% by their government. So they get given a hell of a lot of autonomy.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to actual thinking outside the box, the British. The Americans are the best in the world at war. They've got so we'd go on a patrol and we'd be lucky to have one drone ahead of us to provide us support. You go on patrol with the Americans and there's like 3 or 4 lines of fighter jets above you.
What do you mean best at war?
At achieving a mission.
Okay.
So if they want to achieve a mission,
they have all the resources in the world.
It's unbelievable. You wouldn't it's absolutely astronomical. We've seen them build a full-on air base in 48 hours.
How much money they spend? Billions.
Yeah. My last tour I was on one of their bases. There was 2 saunas and an ice bath on the base and a gym that went over. The base was the size of 2 tennis courts. And it still had that. But the American soldiers, they're good. They're really good at fighting, and they're really, really well resourced. And I still obviously loyalty here. I think SAS, the Australian SAS, have probably got some of the best soldiers in the world because we still are out there a lot. We've still got a lot of work. We're a very small unit, a very small defence force.
Yeah.
So we have to make up for. We can't rely on having all the ISR above us or all the fighters and the aircraft above us.
Yeah.
So for us, I think that's what separates us.
What about the Kiwis? Do they get the mention?
No, they are really, really good soldiers. They just don't get as much opportunity to put into practice.
Okay.
They were brilliant in Afghanistan.
Oh, really?
Yep.
There you go. You don't hear much about them.
No, it's because it's such a small army, and they don't get too many opportunities, but they are brilliant soldiers as well. And
during the whole process when you're deployed, how's your body holding up? Like, how's your food? Are you exercising? Because I know that my body would break if I do a 7-month deployment in Afghanistan. How's the body holding up? Yeah,
it takes a toll. And to be fair, we also probably we often weren't that smart with it sometimes. We were overtrained. Like we were, even back in Australia, you'd be doing physical work every single day. You'd be out in the range, you'd be doing close quarter battle training.
Overtraining's a real thing.
Yeah.
I used to overtrain.
Yep. Yeah. And we'd even in Afghanistan, we'd go out on a mission. We'd go out for 4 or 5 hours on a mission, hunting and potentially fighting. Then we'd come back and we'd probably go to the gym.
Yeah.
There was a squadron of SAS got sent to the Australian Institute of Sport for a heap of testing. And it blew their minds. The AIS, they were saying, well, you shouldn't be able to do what you're doing. Like the levels of cortisol that you guys have is insane. And how low.
Your adrenals must be through the roof.
Yep. Cortisol was incredibly high. Things like testosterone, serotonin were very low.
Yeah. Because if you overtrain, your testosterone plummets.
Yeah. But we were outperforming the metrics of fitness, endurance, and strength that were training. The guys were outperforming.
Yeah, but eventually I presume it's going to crash.
It does, yep. And we've got like sleep's a huge issue in the unit. There's a lot of people who aren't sleeping well. Injuries that we have a lot of soldiers out due to injuries, or we used to anyway. Nowadays, there's a much more smarter approach when it comes to high performance. But yeah, far out. I've been on a deployment where I've been out, like I was decided to do with my mate, do heavy deadlifts, and couldn't put my shoe on without lying on the floor for like 3 days, and I was still having to work.
And how's your sleep during the whole process? Because obviously, I know you're a tough guy, obviously, but we all need to sleep. Yeah, how's your sleep over there when you're deployed and just generally?
So I really struggled for quite a long time. I had about 10 years where I had absolute insomnia. I wouldn't
10 years of insomnia. Yep. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, probably for my first deployment to Afghanistan. Soon after that's when it kicked in. And
what's the reason it kicked in? It's just, I think maybe your adrenals.
It was.
I'm not. This is not fake Dr. Bell. I'm just asking questions.
It would have been an element of that, I think, due to Afghanistan. Everyone wakes up during the night because most people come to a very, very low level and they fall back asleep and they're never even consciously aware that they woke up. For us, our level of alertness probably got to the point where when I was waking up, I was waking wide awake. So then there was an element of that, too much cortisol, you can't sleep.
Yeah, but surely your body's so exhausted that you just have to sleep because you're training crazy amount of hours.
Yeah, well, so I think that's how it started. Then for me, it became a mental thing. I became like, I'm a shit sleeper. Yeah, that's how I saw myself.
That's when it all goes south.
Yep. And then there was nights where I wasn't falling asleep until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then I was getting up at 6 to go to work. Like I felt drunk. I'm going into work I started telling you this outside, but a lot of the time I was getting sleeping tablets and that sort of stuff, which just didn't help me in the slightest.
I think that sleeping tablets, so it's, as you know, it's just a Band-Aid and it doesn't actually resolve the root cause of the issue.
Yep. Yeah.
They are great for certain things. I'm not going to lie, I use them when I travel sometimes.
Yeah.
But I hate taking them though.
Yeah, you can use them to reset your circadian rhythm, if you're especially switching time zones and things like that. So I remember this day because and going to bed for me became something that was so frustrating. I knew that it was going to happen. I'd fall asleep for about half an hour.
I've been there.
Yep. And then you'd be awake until 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just like, so this week I was in quite a leadership role at the time. I was running training and it was close quarter battle training with live ammunition. So this is where you've got going through a building where you can shoot live ammunition. You're shooting close proximity to your mates. It's very fast. It's very high risk. I was driving to work and I felt drunk.
And you were so tired.
I was so tired. I'd probably got maybe an hour and a half sleep that night. So I went straight to the doctor's thing. You're supposed to have an appointment and everything like that. I just walked straight into his office. He was in with someone else. I said, look, I'm about to run live training. I'm about to shoot within a foot of my mates' heads, and I feel like I'm drunk. Because what I wanted was to go to a sleep academy. Yeah. I wanted to go to see sleep specialists, which wasn't supported by the Army at the time. The doctor we had there was really good. He looked after the guys. And he eventually, after that little outburst, he got me to go see a sleep specialist. Did that one where you get connected to all the wires. Yeah. And also saw a sleep psychologist who was brilliant. Really
based in
WA at the time.
Yep.
He's since moved. But that was a really good process. So it was a lot of it was mental for me. So how the sleep psychologist did it, and what would happen, I'd be exhausted, so I'd go to bed earlier. So I'd go to bed at 8 o'clock.
But you actually know you compound the issue by doing that.
Yep.
I've been there and done. That's why.
Yeah. So this guy made me do the opposite. So
restricted sleeping.
Yep. So half an hour off each. I think it was about every week. Yes. I had to take a half hour off each one. Yeah. Wake up half hour earlier, go to bed half an hour later. Yeah. Until I slept through the night, even if it was for 2 hours. Once I got to the point where I went to bed, slept until my alarm went off, then you started bringing it out again. Took months, but I went from not ever sleeping throughout the night to actually getting a full night's sleep.
Yeah. I recently did that.
Oh, yeah?
Time restricted sleeping. So they say, my one said every few days, reduce the amount of time by 30 minutes. Yep. And the reason I did this, I went and saw a sleep doctor and he did the test. He goes to me, your iron levels are low and that's why you've got restless legs and not sleeping. I said, I don't know if that's correct. Then I'm all right. I'll listen to the doctor, injected myself with iron tablets, compounded the issue, made it worse. And as I now know that high iron levels actually oxidizes in the body. So then I found someone who said, to do time restricted sleeping, where you reduce the time by 30 minutes and then you get down to say 5 or 4 hours. And in theory, once you can sleep for 4 or 5 hours straight, you then expand it out by 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It definitely worked. I'm still not a great sleeper, but I'm definitely a better sleeper as a result.
I think and that meant the mentality of it matters so much, though, I found as well.
Yeah.
Like when I was like, I'm a terrible sleeper. I'd tell,
because you talk yourself into it.
Yeah. So then you go to bed anxious and frustrated, cortisol's up. You'd wake up throughout the night and you'd be like, oh, I'm bloody awake again. So it spikes again.
Yeah.
So it's, and sleep's, again, it's critical. I genuinely think that I operated about 80%, if I'm lucky, 80% of what I was capable of for years, simply because I wasn't sleeping that well.
And when did you have sleep issues? Was it during the SAS days?
Towards the end of my time in 1RAR, and SAS selection probably didn't help either, because it apparently takes well over a year for you to fully recover from selection. So that potentially compounded. Is that right?
Because of the lack of sleeping?
Sleep, food, and exercise. Your body's not supposed to lose that much weight.
And how long were you in the SAS for?
About 14 years in the end.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Can you share, if you don't mind, the hairiest story from the SAS?
I remember one of the jobs we went out on. So we always put ourselves at an advantage. So we never fought fair. You're fighting fair, you're stuffed up. You're not supposed to do that. There was one job we went out on after a target we'd been hunting for about 2 months. The previous rotation before us had tried to kill capture him, and he'd fought them out of that valley. So he'd actually effectively defeated them. They had a couple of wounded, or at least one person wounded in action, and they weren't able to get in. They had to pull out of the valley. So he was our biggest target. So we were hunting him for quite a long time. And I remember when we went into that valley, when we actually got the briefing about this, we were sitting there, got briefed up about how many soldiers he had available to him and the tactics that they used last time. So I remember sitting in that helicopter going, all right, this is going to be intense. Like last time, there was a wave of bullets coming at people and all that. So we ended up striking at night. And we had the advantage the whole time, but there was just there was quite a few people managed to move away from that building, and then we were sort of out in the aqueducts around us as individuals, just like you would never knew they were there until they started shooting at you. So that was quite hairy, because it wasn't as such that there was a huge amount of fire going around, but pitch black. We've got night vision goggles, and trying to hunt through this. It was a fairly short area, but it was quite built up, where you weren't actually sure where these guys were.
Does the enemy have the same tech as you?
No, not back then. They didn't.
Yeah.
Nowadays, so my last couple of deployments was
Biden did leave a lot of tech there.
Yeah, they probably do now. They're killing it right now. I've seen footage of their training as well. So I think they're getting foreign assistance there as well. Whereas even ISIS, my last couple of tours were against ISIS. They've got a lot more technology now. And you're sort of getting closer towards peer on peer with them.
That's bad for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. You look at the ISIS drone technology when I was there in 2017 at Mosul. ISIS's drone capabilities were, she's probably in par with what ours are now.
Wow.
Because they just they just pump it out. It needs to get done, they get it done.
Scary stuff. And what's the reason you left the SAS in the end?
Couple of things. Probably a really big contributing factor for me was marry the girl of my dreams, and I didn't really want to. Didn't want to keep doing that, even when we were together. So we were together 4 years. I probably spent 2 years that away.
Yeah.
I proposed to her, and then got told 2 weeks later I was going to Afghanistan for 7 months. So I went from being very popular to being very unpopular very quickly. And I didn't want to. Lots of guys do it. But I just didn't want to do that. And I'd already ticked a lot of my boxes. My body was starting to really fall apart, like my knees, my ankles. I really noticed. I couldn't run without regretting it the next day, especially when you're running with body armor on the rifle. My last tour was, again, I had in 2020, I think it was, May 2021. Again, against ISIS. You'd get the adrenaline surge, and I was like, I'm 18 again, running around with that body armor on, and then I'd wake up the next day and
your body's
barely be able to move. So that was a contributing factor. And there's probably a few other things when it comes to like the investigations that happened and how the SAS has been treated for a few years. I sort of lost faith with the Defence Force, not with the SAS. has always looked after their people and has some brilliant leaders in there that did that.
Looking for a scapegoat.
Yeah. And I just misunderstood, and a lot of things taken well and truly out of proportion. So just with how that process went, I lost faith. And on my last trip, I was there thinking I was overthinking some decisions, not because I thought it was the right or the wrong thing to do, but I was considering, like, am I going to get thrown under the bus for this in 5 years' time by someone on an armchair?
I guess sometimes you just know in life your time's done.
Absolutely.
In certain situations, it's time to move on. You mentioned earlier outside that you've got bad knees. How have you helped resolve and improve your, bad knees? Because I'm in a similar situation. What tactics do you use?
For me, because I really want to run again. Running's always been my fitness activity of choice. I love doing it. So I've been doing knees over toes for a couple of years, and I've found that really ususeful.
Can you share with everyone exactly what that is?
Yeah, so I found him. I think it was on Instagram after I got out.
I found him on Instagram as well.
Yep, and a few guys in the SAS had started doing that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of it is a principle that we're designed that our knees are supposed to go forward of your toes, which I know a long time when I was training was the opposite.
We're all taught the opposite.
Yeah. So it's all about just purely strengthening your knees and your joints around it. And and the muscles around it to be able to run again. And he's a basketballer. I think he's in his 40s.
He's in his 40s. Yeah, I can see him like doing slam dunks and all that business. So basically, when you train, when you squat, your knees go over your toes rather than vertically down.
Yeah. Yep. Pretty much. Or not moving is really what the goal used to be.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of that heel elevated squats, a lot of walking backwards. Yep. Sled pulls. I don't.
Yeah. I do them at home.
Yeah. That's my prerequisite for a gym that I join. It has to have a floor that I can do that on.
Nice.
Because I find that, and sled push that I love as well. So
nice.
And I found that really useful, and I'm spending a lot of time hiking and all that as well at the moment, which has been hard to tell if that's helping or hurting, but I'm doing it.
Who knows? Mate, before we wrap up, in your opinion, what are the top 3 traits that make a great leader?
All right.
And I can learn from this as well.
That's a good question. I don't want to give you something because I'm sick. I see a lot of stuff where it's just token one-word answers that people...
Not the generic bullshit.
Yeah. With what I do when I work with leaders, I don't like telling people what to do. It's how to do it as well, which I think is where there's a big gap. So I still will say, and I know this is something that you hear a lot, is I think vulnerability is one of the most important ones. But what it really means, it's not about being able to cry in front of your team or anything like that. Like being able to own your mistakes, being able to say when you don't know, and being able to seek out constant improvement, being able to say to your team or say to your peers genuinely, how do I get better?
Yeah.
How do I constantly improve?
Yeah.
So I think vulnerability is a huge one. Your ability to set another one I think is something that's critical is being able to separate what's in your control and what's outside your control and to act accordingly. A huge amount of leaders end up getting caught up in things that they've got no ability to control. The fact that especially something's happened in the past or something they're worried about is going to happen in the future. Being able to see, like at the end of the day, all we can control is our thoughts and the way we think, the way we behave. And we can influence a few things around that. With the SAS, we used to teach in combat when things started getting hectic, when we'd had a casualty or something's gone horribly wrong. What now? What next? What can I do? Whenever you catch yourself catastrophizing or ruminating about the past, what's important now? What's important next? So right now I need to focus on doing this. Yeah. And once I've done that, bam, I'll move on to the next task. Trying to avoid being caught in that, worrying about things that we can't control.
Yeah, control the controllable.
Yeah. Yep. And last one, I'm going to lie awake tonight going, I should have said this, other ones, but I'll go with, there's definitely others, but I'm going to say being able to regulate your emotions.
I think that's a big one.
Yep.
Because I know I'm guilty of being not erratic, but I'm like, because I'm so passionate about my business, which is business in general. Yep. If it's not perfect, I'm like, come on, we could.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm guilty of doing this sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's just regulating your emotion.
Yep.
Stay cool, calm, and collective, identify the problem, and then solve it.
Yep. And it's not about suppressing. Because when you feel frustration, when you feel anger, even when you feel excitement, that's good. Like for me, one of my biggest values is fairness and justice. So if I see inappropriate behavior, it frustrates me or makes me angry. For me, using that emotion, the purpose of that is to make me actually go there and can deal with that situation.
Yeah.
But if I don't regulate my emotions first, I'll go over there, I'm going to yell at someone. And that's not helpful.
Yeah.
But having tools, and there's tools, we train soldiers to be cool, calm, collected in battle. We can train leaders to be cool, calm, collected when you're dealing with pressure, when you're dealing with change.
It's a skill.
It is, yeah. And it's something that absolutely can be taught.
Yeah.
So I think that's really, really important because we can teach you how to have a difficult conversation. We can teach you how to lead through change. If you keep losing your temper, if you can't just be cool, calm, collected, it's wasted.
Agreed. Mate, that was a great chat. Thank you very much for that. Really enjoyed that.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.